South Africa's tourism industry appears to be rebounding after 3 tough years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Statistics South Africa released its latest tourism accommodation numbers, showing that the total income for the tourist accommodation industry increased by 38.9% in January 2023 compared with January 2022. The December period also showed a year-on-year improvement, with the total income for the accommodation industry increasing by 41.9% in December 2022 compared with December 2021. Now, the majority of holidaymakers, that's over 60%, still chose to stay in hotels. Meanwhile, in February, the country saw over 2.1 million travelers pass through various ports of entry, 1.5 million of whom were foreign nationals. The vast majority of tourists entering the country are from the SADC region. And this morning, joining me to take a look at how the industry has metamorphosed and grown over the last 3 years in terms of the research and, of course, the reports that we've heard. We have the head of research at Cape Town Tourism, Briony Brookes, joining me. Thank you so much for being part of the discourse this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So after 3 challenging years, we see that the South African tourism industry, its numbers in terms of the values coming in and, of course, the revenue coming in is set to be picking up. That's a bit of positive turnaround, if we could put it that way. What would you say are the factors responsible for this positive growth?
So, yes, you're absolutely right. In Cape Town, we've actually seen that on the domestic side, we are at about 80% recovery when compared to the same time in 2019. And on the international side, at Cape Town International Airport, we've actually surpassed 2019 figures in both January and February this year. So we are at a recovery rate of about 102%, which is fantastic for our industry. And I think that this impressive...
Hello, Briony. Okay, so I guess we just lost connection with Briony there, but then we will see how we can bring her back online to talk about the positivity that has been recorded in the tourism industry right there in South Africa, which is said to be the most industrialized African economy. All right, Briony, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I think we had a bit of connection issues there, but thank God you are back. So I'd like you to just continue with the stats that you were rolling out.
I was saying that we had a recovery rate on the international side at 102%. So we actually surpassed 2019 figures in both January and February this year. And if you look on the domestic side, we are at about 80% on the domestic side, which is an impressive rebound in tourism. And it can be attributed to the tourism bounce back strategy, which we developed with our partners at the City of Cape Town. We implemented the strategy with industry bodies and operators, and it really has paid off. So, but in addition to back in air traffic, we've also seen that our experiences are recovering very nicely as well when compared to 2019.
Well, so you say that you have surpassed projections, but then looking at it from 2019 up to now, would you say that you could have achieved that? Because we know that the pandemic was very debilitating on so many businesses all over Africa. So would you say that you could have achieved that looking at that particular situation? And of course, would you say that the recovery rate has been quick?
Yes, definitely. It's a lot quicker than we imagined. Our industry really took a hard knock over the last 3 years, and the fact that we've surpassed 2019 figures in such a short space of time is very impressive.
All right. Well, according to stats now, statistics, foreign arrivals in South Africa in 2019 was said to have dropped about 71%. That's looking at tourist attractions in terms of numbers from about 15.8 million to just 5 million in December 2020. But now that we are seeing growing numbers, now would you say that the sector is now back to its glory days? Because you said that the growth rate has gone to about 102% in just about 3 years. So would you say that you have attained the peak that you've always wanted?
Yes, absolutely. When you talk about figures in January, we saw just over 136,000 internationals arrive at Cape Town International Airport. And when compared to the same time, January 2019, that is 102% recovery, which is phenomenal. When you look at the domestic arrivals, if you look at figures of people that have actually arrived, there were over 250,000 people who arrived at Cape Town International Airport, which is 80% when you look at the recovery rate. So yes, we are surpassing those numbers, and we are very impressed with the recovery and how quickly we've gotten there.
So in terms of implication now, how would you say that the travel and tourism industry has impacted South Africa's GDP and its economy?
The tourism industry is very important for our economic growth. We bring a lot of money into the economy with tourism and with international guests. We have discovered that over the COVID and pandemic period, we had to speak to our domestic audience a lot more than we spoke to them before. So we have marketed our destination to the domestic audience a little bit harder than we have done before, but we launched a fantastic international campaign in March last year, which has really helped us on the international side. And again, from the research that we've done, travel behavior has changed, but people are still very interested in Cape Town and South Africa as a destination.
All right. Earlier on, you talked about the fact that you were able to have some sort of partnership with international investors and partners, as it were. But then let's look at it on the part of the government. Were you able to secure any form of grant or assistance from the government to catalyze the recovery process?
We have had a fantastic partnership with the City of Cape Town, who has invested a lot of money into the industry and helped our industry recover at this rapid rate.
All right. Now, your role is to research and to look at the trends in terms of travels to Cape Town and, of course, accommodation, as it were. So, of course, we are seeing some steady growth in terms of accommodation in South Africa. But looking at it from your own end, how would you place the figures in terms of tourists coming to lodge into hotels and, of course, other associated businesses related to the tourism sector? How would you describe it?
So travel behavior has changed over the last 3 years. From the research that we've done, we've seen that the booking window is a lot shorter in terms of lead times. Now that we are sort of fully back to recovery, we are seeing that people are booking their trips further in advance. A couple of months ago, people were booking trips between 2 and 3 months in advance, and now they're back to 5 or 6 months. The way that they are consuming information has also changed. We're finding that a lot of internationals are relying on the online travel agents to book their trips. And on the domestic side, they are consuming information from social media. So all the inspiration around travel destinations sits on social media channels. And then again, we've seen that the motivation for travel is still rest and relaxation. People want to come to Cape Town, for nature and landscapes. With regards to accommodation, people are still staying at hotels, and in our accommodation sector, they've also had a very good recovery on the accommodation sector. But what we have seen is that people are also booking Airbnbs, and some people are preferring to stay with friends and family.
All right. During the pandemic, we noticed that, of course, restrictions and lockdowns made it impossible for foreign tourists to come into the country and visit some tourist attractions. But then we saw an uptick in domestic travelers visiting part of the tourist attractions in South Africa. Did that have any sort of contributions in terms of revenue accruals to the country? And has the trend continued over time?
Yes, absolutely. As I alluded to before, we've really spoken to our domestic audience a lot more than we have before. We launched a pocket-friendly challenge probably about 2 years ago to encourage domestic tourists to visit Cape Town. And what we highlighted is the affordability factor of Cape Town and the fact that there are lots of affordable experiences, accommodation providers, and restaurants that offer very affordable options for local travelers. So we have seen that people have come to Cape Town from the domestic market, and they still are coming. As I said earlier on, we're at about 80% recovery, which is fantastic.
All right. One source of concern for travelers, most especially those coming from other countries, has to do with the crime rate in South Africa, which, of course, is not only South Africa that is within that that insecurity space. But then I'd like to know what you are doing, or what South Africa is doing in terms of changing the narrative and putting an end to that stereotype, because that could also affect the tourism numbers that could come to the country.
Absolutely. Safety has always been a challenge for us, and Cape Town is a developing city. What we do from a Cape Town tourism perspective is educate our visitors before they arrive in destination, and educate them while they are in destination. So we give them tips, we educate them. We've got a section on our website that provides them with information so they are aware and educated before they arrive in Cape Town. We've also partnered with Namola, which is a free safety and security app that people download onto their phones, and they have access to emergency lines in an instant if they need it.
All right, that's good. So we understand that there's been, of course, this unemployment issue in South Africa of late, and it has led to protests, civil unrests in the course of a couple of years back. So now that we're seeing the demand levels growing and influx of foreigners into the country, how do you think that is impacting the job creation drive of the current administration, most especially for those who lost their jobs during the pandemic? Are they regaining their means of livelihood, as it were?
So the feedback from our members and our member businesses is that they are recruiting. We've created hundreds of jobs because of the rate at which the tourism industry is recovered. And we are seeing, and feedback from our members is that they are actively recruiting. And yes, they did let people go during the pandemic, but they are recruiting more people. And I think that that's a great opportunity for us as an industry. And it's a great opportunity to counter what's happening with the unemployment.
All right. So let's talk about the top 10 overseas African markets for tourism, most especially for the tourists coming from other countries into South Africa. Now, would you tell me, or I'd like you to tell me, what are those top 10 countries, and if you're having traffic from these countries as of now?
So our top 3 key source markets, and they are still our top 3 markets, is the UK, the US, and Germany. We are seeing a lot more arrivals from African countries. We actually launched a partnership with Victoria Falls recently because of the demand in overseas visitors wanting more than one African destination on their itinerary when they come into Africa. So that's a very positive thing for us. But the top 3 key source markets is still the US, UK, and Germany.
All right, so let's talk about the issue of foreigners coming to work in the country, because we know that tourism actually accommodates a potpourri of different nationalities within the sector from different countries, having some means of livelihood within the sector. So now we're aware that there are many foreign workers coming from different African countries into South Africa to earn a living. Now, what is the situation as regards this? Do we still have these numbers of foreign workers within the industry, and what has been their contribution so far?
I think it's a great opportunity for people to come to South Africa and to earn an income. We are seeing lots of Africans taking up positions in the tourism industry, which is fantastic. It shows diversity within our destination, and people love engaging with locals. So I think it's a fantastic thing.
All right, finally, before I let you go, in the advent of, well, we are not hoping that there will be another global pandemic, of course, but we have to be proactive and preventive. Now, in an advent of such another kind of global crisis, what do you think that South African government can do, and of course the tourism industry can do, to insulate itself from another possible grinding down of activities?
and it's something that we always say is that, we are very resilient as South Africans. We've been through a water crisis. We've been through a global pandemic now. I think we are a resilient bunch of people. And I think education is something that is very important. Educating international visitors on the situation in South Africa and the situation particularly in Cape Town is first and foremost for us. We always communicated to our visitors, even through the pandemic. We were very open and honest about the situation in Cape Town and in South Africa, and educating them so that they understand what the situation is foremost.
All right, so I cannot let you go without chipping this in. Of course, we understand there's been the issue of power crisis, load shedding in South Africa. It's been a huge issue when it comes to businesses, because a whole lot of businesses have been affected by that. Revenue's been lost over time because there's not been enough power for the manufacturing industries and for those who rely on electricity for their businesses and operations. So how has that affected the tourism industry, and what is it that you think can be done for that particular industry to leave above board the challenges as regards power generation?
Our member businesses have really suffered because of load shedding. There are a number of factors that is harming their business, and I think that the erratic schedule of load shedding is probably the biggest thing. I think that they're also feeling it financially because they are looking at alternative sources of energy, so they're spending a lot more money on things like diesel for power generation, which they didn't budget for before. But I think from a Cape Town tourism perspective, we let visitors know of the experiences that they can still take advantage of, during power outages. We've got a fantastic destination with natural beauty. There's lots of things to do outside where you don't need power, where you don't need to have the lights on all day long. And that's what we encourage our visitors to do during power outages, which has really helped.
Thank you so much, Briony, for joining us. One key word that I would take out from this conversation is the fact that you said that the industry has been resilient despite the challenges, and of course the partnership that you've been able to get from other stakeholders to drive and stir up the economy. And we hope that this positive trajectory will not end, but it will continue. Thank you so much, Briony, for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.